I'm Julie Morris with Wildlands Conservation. We are a nonprofit conservation organization based in Venice, and we work throughout Southwest and South Central Florida. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Cooperative Conservation Blueprint and our partner initiative, the Peace River Network. A lot of you heard the beginning of this before, so bear with me. I think it's new to some of you. I have to give the background though. The Cooperative Conservation Blueprint, or CCB, is an FWC project, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, that began in 2006. It was envisioned as a consensus starting point for planning. The goal was to have a map of statewide conservation priorities and voluntary non-regulatory incentives that apply to that map. In 2011, FWC decided to hone in and develop a pilot project for the CCB. They chose the Southwest region because of the extensive ecological planning and conservation work that had already been done in that region. The goal of the pilot project was to generate broad agreement about a set of wildlife corridors that connected existing public lands and identify private landowner conservation incentives that would help facilitate the protection of those corridors. And the pilot area was from Polk County all the way down to Collier County and over to Lake Okeechobee. We broke the region up into three sub-regions. The southern area, committee focused on Big Cypress, connecting Big Cypress up to Fish Shooting Creek. The eastern committee focused on Fish Shooting Creek up to Avon Park. And the Western Committee, or the Peace River Committee, focused on the area from Babcock up to the Green Swamp. Wildlands, our organization, took the lead on the Peace River Committee, and our goal was to connect Babcock to Mayaca over to Brighthauer up to the Green Swamp, and identify solid east-west connections over to the Lake Wales Ridge and the coastal conservation lands. We had a stakeholder committee that was made up of local and regional knowledge and expertise, and a lot of you were involved in that. The committee worked to identify the best ecological routing options, and we started to match those routing options with existing and potential incentives for conservation. Can you hear me? Okay. Backing up a little, in 2010, Wildlands Conservation launched a voluntary program called the Peace River Network. And our goal is to conserve ecological corridors of public and private conservation and agricultural lands along the Peace River and its major tributaries. That effort dovetailed perfectly with the CCB, so we merged the two initiatives. Our goal as part of the Peace River Network and CCB is protecting priority wildlife corridors. We're working to maintain the water quality and quantity that is essential for the ecological integrity of the Charlotte Harbor Watershed. We are conserving biodiversity of regional, statewide, and national significance. And the Peace River is important to remember is one of the few options to connect conservation lands in South Florida to conservation lands in the north. And a lot of attention is paid on the corridor from the Everglades up through South Central Florida to the northern Everglades and the St. Johns River drainage. But the Peace River is actually one of the primary alternatives to connect North and South Florida. And then most of all, we started working in this region because of the lack of conservation lands here. Looking at this map, the green is existing conservation lands. The brown are Florida Forever projects. That means essentially they're in a queue to be acquired by the state either as fee simple or conservation easements. And the light brown here is represented by CLIP. CLIP is a decision support tool developed by the Florida Natural Areas Inventory and the University of Florida, and it identifies the areas that have the highest natural resource values in the state. So you can see that there's a big hole of green lands here in the Peace River region. We're surrounded to the north, south, east, and west by a lot of protected lands those are lacking in the Peace River region. The green here represents the corridors that our stakeholder committee came up with. And it's important to realize that not all of these corridors are created equal. Some of them represent specific routing options based on landowner buy-in and on-the-ground opportunities and obstacles. And some represent general opportunity areas that our landowners until we were able to provide more definition of what these corridors would mean. And these corridors kind of add the human element to the science. So we looked at wildlife corridor modeling efforts, we looked at existing local, regional, statewide data, and then our stakeholder committee, kind of took in the on-the-ground reality. We had a lot of landowners involved, industry involved, agencies, the environmental community. So we looked at what was actually feasible on the ground as far as protection. These are not final. These are being redesigned and revamped based on landowner feedback. This is a voluntary program, so if landowners do not want to be on this map, they're not going to be identified. I just said this, the corridors were chosen due to modeling efforts, landowner buy-in, and existing protection opportunities in the region. So what are we doing now? In partnership with FWC, we are working with agencies to elevate these stakeholder corridors to a priority level in acquisition and incentive programs. So that means we are working with DEP and Florida Forever projects, Department of Agriculture on Rural and Family Lands Protection Program projects, NRCS on Farm Bill easement programs and other incentive programs. We are also working with the University of Florida to identify strategic areas on where we need to focus our efforts. We are working with willing landowners on acquisition and easement programs, and we are also developing a pilot payments for ecosystem services program for the gopher tortoise in the region. One of the examples of a strategic analysis that we've done in partnership with UF is to identify wetland restoration priorities. And this is important for identifying areas that would be able to receive funds for dispersed water storage, mitigation dollars, or potential wetland restoration dollars such as the Wetland Reserve Program. For this analysis, we identified wetland soils that are no longer wetlands, that are not developed. We prioritize these areas based on proximity to surface water network, their ranking in the Aquatic tool, and then their proximity to conservation lands. That just is a quick and dirty map that shows where our wetland restoration priorities are. Red and yellow are a higher priority. Another thing that we're doing is engaging in wildlife habitat modeling efforts to help us identify what areas are most critical for specific listed species. We do know that panthers are already in the region. We think that it's most likely just young males that are crossing the Calusa and coming north. It's important for recovery efforts to have a breeding population of panthers north of the Calusa River, and the Peace River region does provide potential habitat. Another project we're working on in partnership with FWC is a pilot payment for ecosystem services program for the gopher tortoise. The yellow here identifies areas that have been, or identifies specific properties that have high priority gopher tortoise habitat. So for this project, we are focusing on the Peace River region, and we are working with 6 landowners, I'm going to talk a little bit later about that, to develop a pilot payment for ecosystem services program in the region. And then we are working with landowners on specific acquisition and easement programs. The pink right here represents a Florida Forever project we have just submitted. This builds off the Mayaka Ranchlands project in Sarasota County. It goes into DeSoto County. This is a less-than-fee project that we just submitted. In addition, we did submit the Peace River Refuge, which is that brown area along the river in DeSoto County. The other, brown areas are other Florida Forever projects that we advocate for in front of the state. We are working with landowners to submit applications for the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program, and also working with other landowners on farm bill programs, including easement programs. The green here, I don't know if you can see it, that touches already written, that's recent conservation victories. Here, our Mosaic bought Peaceful Horse Ranch as a result of the settlement with the Sierra Club, and this is 4,000 plus acres on a critical wildlife corridor. So we hope that spurs conservation actions, further conservation actions in this important area. So generally, we're building a coalition of landowners and stakeholders to further conservation actions within the region. Us as a nonprofit, we can keep going up there and shouting from the rooftop. But what we found is that landowners and other stakeholders are a very effective voice for And to wrap it up, our overall goal is basically to increase protected lands through fee simple and conservation easements in an area that's been long overlooked by conservation funding programs. And I'd like to thank the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and the Mosaic Foundation for continuing to fund these efforts. Thank you.
Questions for Julie?
I'm fairly scientific, interested in environmentalism. The big long, the north-south movement, as far as I'm concerned, is a wildlife corridor under I-4. And it seems to me, until you have that, you need more flexibility with the rest of your plan. And I wonder if there's anybody who's working on that. Are you making any progress?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I-4 connection north to the Green Swamp is very important. We are working on that specifically with other stakeholders such as the Sierra Club and Polk County that have involved. There have been areas identified as potential wildlife crossings by DOT. Right now, a lot of those areas have been built out, and we have identified. Pardon?
There's land.
There is land, and we've identified different routing options. A direct crossing from the Peace River to the Green Swamp, that's becoming more and more difficult, but we are working with interested landowners there and the county and local government in Polk County to see if there's a way that we can still piece together natural land to connect, because obviously it's very important for that north-south movement to connect up to the Green Swamp. So absolutely.
The Panthers can't get out, they're going to end up all over Polk County. Right?
Yeah.
I have a similar question. What is the size criteria as far as linking all these lands together? Is there what's the minimum size that you would be interested in from that perspective?
So I hesitate to talk about minimum sizes because it's a slippery slope, and all of a sudden someone will get a hold of it and say, well, we could have protected the 3 mile wide thing, but Julie just said, a half a mile is enough, so let's just do a half a mile.
Well, no, what I'm saying is the idea of not saying, that would be enough, and the idea of saying that if you had smaller parcels that were linked together, are those still of interest from that standpoint?
They are, and I would just say it depends. It depends on what the surrounding land uses are. It depends on what the core habitat is that we're trying to connect, and it depends on what species we're looking at, and what areas are appropriate for what species. So, and of course, the answer is it depends.